At 19, you don't expect your entire life to collapse in a single afternoon, but mine did the moment my stepbrother stood outside my bedroom door pretending to cry. One moment I was lying on my bed scrolling through my phone, half asleep, and the next I opened the door to find Tyler with trembling hands, teary eyes, and a tone so dramatic it would have earned him an award if he wasn't using it to destroy my entire future. "Bro, where's my money?" he whispered, voice shaking like he'd just survived some tragedy. I stared at him, confused, because what money? But before I could ask again, he stepped aside and revealed my dad standing behind him, arms crossed, disappointment carved so deeply into his face that my heart dropped before I even knew what I was being accused of. Dad didn't yell. That made it worse. He held his phone up with a map on his screen, a little dot showing my location at 2:43 a.m., right outside Tyler's room. I frowned, because I didn't remember being awake at that time, but I did have this habit of sleepwalking around the house or getting up for water without remembering in the morning. Before I could explain that, Tyler started performing, his voice cracking as he said his entire savings, $3,200 he'd been saving for a car, was gone. Dad immediately wrapped his arm around him, comforting him like he was the victim, and in that moment I saw it, a tiny flicker in Tyler's expression, not sadness, not betrayal, but calculation. Something clicked in the back of my mind, but I pushed it away because surely he wouldn't go this far. Surely he wouldn't frame me for stealing. Except that's exactly what he did. They dragged me downstairs like I was some criminal, Mom sitting stiffly on the couch with her eyes avoiding mine, like she already believed I was guilty. Dad dropped a black pouch onto the table, the same cheap Amazon cash pouch I lost weeks ago, and unzipped it to reveal a thick wad of money. "We found this in your closet," he said, voice cold. My heart pounded because I had never seen that money before in my life. I tried to explain, but every word trembled, and trembling sounds like lying. Tyler kept wiping his fake tears, sniffling like he was heartbroken, and Dad ate it all up. He didn't ask questions. He didn't let me speak. He didn't even consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, his golden boy wasn't telling the truth. Instead, he slammed the pouch down and said the words that knocked the air out of my lungs. "Pack your things. Get out." I remember searching his face for any sign of hesitation, any sign that he knew deep down I wasn't capable of stealing, but his eyes were locked, cold, and final. My throat burned as I whispered, "Dad, where am I supposed to go?" But he didn't flinch. "You're 19, he said. "Figure it out." I packed slowly, hands shaking so much I kept dropping clothes. Every time I looked at the doorway, I saw Tyler standing there with that same fake broken expression, except now there was something else underneath. Smugness. Satisfaction. Victory. He knew I saw it. He didn't even bother hiding it anymore. Right when I zipped my bag, my phone rang, my girlfriend, Mia. I answered, desperate to hear one voice that didn't hate me, but her tone was sharp before I even spoke. "Did you steal from your brother?" she demanded. My stomach twisted as I realized Tyler had already posted the video online. "Mia, please, listen to me," but she cut in, "Why would he lie?" That sentence shattered something inside me because she, the person I loved, chose him over me too. She didn't wait for the truth. Didn't ask for my side. She just repeated what everyone else decided. I can't be with someone who does stuff like this. Then she hung up. Just like that. I stared at my dim phone screen, my reflection blurry through the tears I didn't even realize were falling, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely alone. I walked out of the house with my duffel bag digging into my shoulder, and not a single person stopped me. Mom didn't speak. Dad didn't speak. Tyler leaned against the railing with a tiny smirk hiding under his fake sad expression, and in that moment I knew he planned this. He set me up. He planted the money. He faked the timestamp. He framed me. But the biggest question hung in my mind like a storm cloud ready to burst. Why? Why go this far? Why destroy me so completely? I didn't have the answer yet, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty as the door shut behind me. I wasn't going to stay quiet. I wasn't going to disappear. I was going to find the truth, even if it meant tearing apart every lie he built. Because Tyler didn't just ruin my reputation, he ruined my entire life in one afternoon. And he had no idea that I had noticed something small, something subtle, something he didn't realize would matter. Something that would eventually expose why he wanted me gone. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that the reason behind this setup was far darker and far more dangerous than missing money. And I was about to uncover all of it. The bus station became my shelter that night, a place where no one knew me, no one judged me, and no one looked at me like a thief. I sat in a corner seat with my bag beside me, staring at the cracked tiles and trying to understand how my life had flipped upside down in less than an hour. The TikTok video was already exploding, comments rolling in like waves, each one sharper than the last, each one calling me a liar, a criminal, a disappointment. Tyler knew exactly what he was doing. He chose the right music, the right captions, the right angles, and he played the crying victim so convincingly that even I almost believed he had actually lost something. But I knew him better than anyone. Tyler didn't care about money. Tyler cared about attention. He cared about drama, chaos, and being the center of every conversation. And if he had to burn my life to the ground to get it, he'd do it without blinking. But something about this felt too big, too organized, too perfectly executed to just be about clout. And that thought haunted me harder than being thrown out. I pulled out my phone and rewatched the video for the 50th time. The timestamp glowed on the screen, 2:43 a.m. Me walking down the hallway. Me passing by Tyler's room. Me looking suspicious, guilty, like I was creeping in the dark. Except I didn't remember any of it. I remembered taking a shower that night. I remembered getting into bed. I remembered thinking about Mia and school and what I'd eat in the morning. But the hallway? Nothing. Then it hit me. I always sleepwalked. I'd been doing it since I was 10, but I never thought it was a problem. Sometimes I'd wake up in the kitchen or living room. Sometimes Dad would joke that I walked around like a zombie at night. What if I did walk past Tyler's room, but not for the reason he claimed? What if he had been waiting for me to do exactly that? I pressed my fists into my eyes, trying to process the possibility. The video was framed too perfectly, like he had set up his phone in advance, knowing I'd pass by. Who records their hallway at almost 3 in the morning unless they're planning something? It made my skin crawl to imagine Tyler standing there, holding his phone, waiting for me to show up so he could press record. The thought made my stomach twist, because it meant he didn't panic when his money disappeared. He expected it. Or he needed it to disappear. And he needed someone to blame. I called Ethan, the only person who ever actually listened to me. He picked up on the second ring, his voice half asleep but concerned. I told him everything, every detail, every suspicion. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment before he said, "Bro, I'm gonna be honest. This sounds planned." My throat tightened. "I know." "Then ask yourself something," he said. "Why would he do it? What does he gain from destroying you?" That question dropped like a stone into my chest. What did Tyler gain? Attention? Sympathy? Maybe. But it didn't feel big enough. Not enough to stage an entire theft and manipulate our parents. Not enough to risk getting caught. Not enough to ruin a whole life. Then I remembered the argument I overheard 3 weeks ago, Tyler and his mom whispering in the kitchen, voices tense, words sharp. She said something about paying someone back. He said he needed time. She asked what they would do to him if he didn't. At the time, I shrugged it off as normal teenage stupidity. Maybe he borrowed money from a friend, maybe he bought something expensive and lied about it. But now, with everything falling into place like pieces of a dark puzzle, I realized the truth was far worse. I needed Wi-Fi. I needed information. I needed to stalk his social media until I found a crack. With $60 in my pocket, the only option was a cheap internet cafe downtown. I hopped on the bus, sat inside a sticky metal cubicle, logged in, and started digging through every post Tyler ever made. 2 weeks ago, he bragged about earning money from a side hustle, posting a picture of a deposit slip, $1,200 in cash. 10 days ago, he posted stories about hanging out with older guys I'd never seen before. 5 days ago, he uploaded a picture of a brand new gaming keyboard with the caption, "Grinding pays off, smiling face with sunglasses." None of it added up. If he was saving money for a car, why was he buying expensive tech? If he had money to deposit, why was he keeping thousands in a drawer? And most importantly, why did he panic only when exactly $3,200 went missing? The answer clicked so suddenly it made me grip the sides of the desk as my lungs froze. Tyler didn't lose money. Tyler owed money. And not to a friend. Not to classmates. To someone dangerous, someone his mom was terrified of, someone who wanted their money back, someone he was desperate enough to frame me for. He didn't need me kicked out, he needed a scapegoat. Someone to blame when those people came knocking. Someone to point at and say, he took it. Someone who wasn't biologically part of their family. Someone expendable. Someone like me. My heart pounded against my ribs as the realization grew heavier. They didn't choose to believe Tyler because they thought he was telling the truth. They chose him because protecting him meant protecting themselves. If something bad happened, if someone dangerous showed up, they could say, the thief is gone. We kicked him out. We did the right thing. And I would be the sacrifice. The one thrown out to save the rest. I stood from the chair, my pulse racing with a mix of fear and fury. They didn't just abandon me. They offered me up. And Tyler didn't just set me up. He used me as a shield. I wasn't going to let that slide. I wasn't going to let him hide behind me while I took the fall for his mess. If Tyler owed someone money, if he was involved in something deeper, there would be proof. Texts. Messages. Transactions. Something he didn't expect anyone to find. Something I could use to expose him. I didn't know how yet. Not without access to the house, his phone, his room. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to stay quiet, and I wasn't going to disappear the way they hoped I would. I was going to dig until I found the truth. And when I did, everyone who threw me away would face it, piece by piece, lie by lie, until the truth swallowed everything they built around me. Tyler wasn't just covering up missing money. He was covering up something much bigger. And I had just taken my first step toward uncovering all of it. The fallout from that night didn't happen all at once. It unfolded slowly, like watching your own life rot in real time. And no matter how loudly you screamed inside, no one could hear you. I spent the first week crashing on couches, dragging my duffel bag from place to place, pretending I was fine, pretending I wasn't shattered by the fact that my own blood, my own stepbrother, had looked me dead in the eye and fed my father a lie so vicious it broke the last sliver of safety I ever thought I had in that house. And the worst part wasn't even being kicked out. It was the silence. The way my dad didn't call. The way my so-called friends didn't text. The way the world kept spinning while I felt stuck in this endless loop of replaying every moment of my childhood, searching for any sign that this betrayal was coming. There wasn't one. But you don't get time to grieve when you're fighting to survive. Rent was coming up fast for the friend letting me crash on his couch, and I could feel the tension radiating every time he looked at the calendar. I started working extra shifts at a crappy warehouse job, hauling boxes until my hands tore open, because a paycheck was the only thing that didn't lie to me. It wasn't kindness. It wasn't loyalty. It didn't promise something and then yank it away. It was cold, heavy, miserable, but real. The kind of real I could rely on. Meanwhile, my stepbrother, Ryan, was out there living like nothing happened. I'd hear bits and pieces through people who still floated around the edges of my life. He bought a new gaming setup. He showed off his expensive shoes. He laughed about how stupid I was for being caught. Every rumor hit like another shovel of dirt thrown on top of me. And I kept thinking, why me? Why would someone who grew up in the same house, who ate at the same table, who called me his brother, choose me to destroy? But deep down, I knew. Because out of everyone in that house, I was the easiest target. I was the one who never caused problems. I was the one who didn't fight back. I was the one who took on extra chores so Dad wouldn't yell at him. I was the one who covered for him when he snuck out. I was the one who grew up hearing just be the bigger person every time he messed up. And people like him feed on people like that. 3 weeks after being kicked out, I finally tried calling my dad. Not to beg, not to argue, just to try. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. I almost hung up. On the 4th ring, he answered. His voice was cold. Tired. Like he was speaking to a stranger he didn't want on the line. I told him I didn't take the money. I told him I never would have hurt him like that. And there was this long pause, this heavy, suffocating pause, where for a split second I thought he might say something human. But then he sighed and said, Ryan wouldn't lie about something like that. And that was it. That was the moment something in me snapped so cleanly I swear I heard it. Because my dad wasn't stupid. Deep down, he knew Ryan would lie about anything if it benefited him. But he didn't care, not enough to question him, not enough to look me in the eyes, not enough to risk being wrong. Believing the lie was easier than accepting the truth. He had raised a son who loved causing damage, and another son who had spent his whole life trying not to make waves. And if one of us had to go, he chose the one who made his life easier to ignore. The next month was a blur of exhaustion and anger. I moved into a tiny attic room I found on a rental app. The kind of place where the walls are so thin you can hear someone breathing in the hallway. But at least it was mine. I worked, I slept, I saved what little I could, and every night I felt this slow burn in my chest grow hotter. Not revenge. Not yet. Something deeper, something rawer, like the first spark that forms right before a wildfire starts devouring the forest. And the universe must have felt that shift, because out of nowhere, something happened that changed everything. A girl I barely talked to in high school messaged me. She said, "Hey, you need to know something about Ryan." Those words made my stomach drop. She told me Ryan had been bragging around town that he got rid of me because I was in the way of something big. She didn't know the details, but she said it was about money, more money than what was in his savings. She said he'd been talking about a deal he needed to look clean for, and that pinning the theft on me made him look responsible. At first, I didn't want to believe it. But the more she talked, the more everything made sickening sense. The sudden new electronics. The expensive shoes. The way he acted untouchable. My stepbrother hadn't framed me just to ruin me. He framed me because someone, somewhere, was about to give him a lot of money or trust him with something valuable, and he needed a spotless record. And I was the easiest stain to scrub out. That was the first time I felt something cold settle in me. A decision. A shift. A realization that I could keep suffering quietly, or I could start pulling the truth out of the dark one thread at a time. And when you've already lost everything, your home, your father, your reputation, fear stops being a cage. It becomes fuel. The next day, I started digging. I didn't have a plan, not yet, but I had motive, anger, and a reason to finally stop playing the passive character in a story someone else kept rewriting. I went back to people I hadn't talked to in years. I asked questions. I listened. I pieced together rumors, timelines, whispers. And the deeper I went, the more I realized something terrifying. Ryan hadn't just lied about stealing his savings. He had been lying about a lot of things. Things big enough to destroy reputations. Things illegal enough to land someone in jail. Things dangerous enough to put everyone around him at risk. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I wasn't afraid of my father's disappointment. I wasn't afraid of being alone. I was afraid of what I was becoming, because the only thing stronger than betrayal is the rage of someone who finally sees the truth. And I wasn't done yet. Not even close. I didn't realize how deep Ryan's lies went until I found myself staring at a truth so twisted it made my skin crawl. A truth so dangerous that exposing it wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. It was about dragging a monster into the light before he burned more lives the way he burned mine. Everything started unraveling the day I visited the small electronics shop where he claimed he worked weekends to earn money for his savings, the same savings he accused me of stealing. I walked in pretending I needed a charger cable, acting casual like I wasn't watching the clerk's every move. When I mentioned Ryan's name, expecting the guy to say something neutral, he stiffened. He shifted his eyes, leaned forward, and lowered his voice like he was afraid the walls might snitch on him. He said Ryan hadn't worked there in over a year, and the last time he did, he was fired for pulling shady deals behind the counter. The clerk didn't give specifics, but he said something that hooked itself into my spine. If he's telling people he works here, he's hiding something. That one sentence felt like a detonator. Suddenly everything made sense. The money he flashed around, the fake stories, the random new friends who looked older and meaner than anyone from our neighborhood. It wasn't savings he lost. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a cover story. And I was the perfect scapegoat to keep the real reason buried. For the first time in months, I felt something like purpose sharpening inside me. I went home to my tiny attic room, sat on the cold floor, and began connecting every timeline, every lie, every coincidence. The picture forming was ugly. Ryan wasn't just messing around, he was involved in something criminal. Something serious, but knowing wasn't enough. I needed proof. Proof strong enough to slap the truth onto the table so violently that not even my dad could ignore it. So I went where I never thought I'd go again, back to my old friend group, the same people who abandoned me the moment they heard Ryan's accusation, the ones too scared or too lazy to question it. Approaching them felt like swallowing broken glass, but desperation is a powerful motivator. I found them hanging out behind the same fast food place we always went to after school. They fell silent when they saw me, some uncomfortable, some guilty, some pretending to be tough. I didn't argue or beg. I just said, I know Ryan lied. I need to know what he told you. At first they brushed me off. But then one of them, a girl named Sam, who used to be close to both me and Ryan, broke. She looked at the others, exhaled shakily, and told me everything she'd overheard. Ryan hadn't just bragged about getting rid of me. He talked openly about doing side jobs for someone older, someone who paid well but demanded loyalty. He said he needed a clean reputation because big money was coming, and his family couldn't see him as the irresponsible one anymore. Hearing that lit something volcanic inside me. I asked if she had anything concrete, anything physical. She hesitated, then admitted she had screenshots. Messages he'd sent her months ago, messages bragging about money he'd make, about how he manipulated Dad, about how easy it was to turn people against me. She didn't show them before because she was scared of Ryan, scared he'd retaliate the way he retaliated against me. But now she was scared of what he was becoming. When she handed me those screenshots, it felt like holding matches in a house soaked in gasoline. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my room rereading every message, every timestamp, cross-referencing it with what I'd learned. Everything aligned. Every lie had a purpose. Every detail fit. And all of it pointed to one truth: my stepbrother was involved in illegal dealing, using stolen electronics as collateral, and the savings he blamed me for taking weren't his, they belonged to the people he owed. That's why he needed innocence. That's why he needed a victim. That's why he needed me gone. The next morning, I made the decision that would change everything. I walked straight into the police station. I didn't walk in angry, or emotional, or broken. I walked in like someone who had nothing left to lose. I told them everything, what I knew, what I suspected, who they should talk to, where they should look. I handed over the screenshots, the receipts, the statements from the electronics store clerk. And for the first time, someone actually listened. The investigation started quietly, like a shadow sliding under a door. They checked security footage. They interviewed people. They traced transactions. They followed connections. And within a week, they found what they needed: actual evidence that Ryan had been reselling stolen devices and funneling the money to people he should have never been involved with. The moment they knocked on my dad's door with a warrant, everything flipped. My phone buzzed nonstop, calls, texts, frantic messages from people who once ghosted me. But the one call that froze me came from my dad. His voice was shaking. Not angry. Not cold. Shaking. He said, "Son, I didn't know." And hearing that made something inside me crack, not in a dramatic way, not in a cinematic way, but in a quiet, exhausted way. Because I realized he didn't call me son out of love. He said it out of fear, fear that he had bet everything on the wrong child. When Ryan was arrested, the truth spread fast. Suddenly the same people who mocked me, who shut their doors on me, who assumed the worst, wanted to apologize. My dad wanted me home. My old friends wanted to reconnect. Everyone wanted absolution, forgiveness, a clean rewrite of the past. But I didn't go home. I didn't celebrate. I didn't rub anything in anyone's face. I just stood there watching the world correct itself without offering me the peace I thought it would. Because the truth is, clearing your name doesn't erase the damage. It doesn't undo the nights you slept on cold floors. It doesn't heal the wounds of being abandoned by people who should have fought for you. It doesn't fix the part of you that learned, violently, that love is conditional and trust is fragile. My dad begged for a conversation. I gave him one. Not to reconcile. Not to rebuild. Just for closure. I met him at a cafe, and he looked older than I remembered, guilt carving hollow spaces around his eyes. He apologized, stumbling over every word like he didn't know where to place them. I listened quietly. When he finished, I told him the truth. You didn't lose a son because of Ryan's lies. You lost a son because you never questioned them. And that was the last time we spoke. I rebuilt my life slowly, painfully, intentionally. I kept my job, moved into a better place, surrounded myself with people who showed loyalty through action, not convenience. And for once, I wasn't living in my stepbrother's shadow or my father's silence. I was living for myself. Not as a victim. Not as the falsely accused. But as someone who learned the hardest way that sometimes you have to lose everything to finally see who you are without the weight of other people's stories crushing you. Ryan's downfall didn't give me my old life back. It gave me a new one where the truth was mine again. One where I didn't need anyone's validation to breathe. One where betrayal wasn't the end of my story, but the beginning of a life I finally controlled. And that's the part no one tells you. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the moment you stop being the person people can throw away and start becoming the person no one can break again.